Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adwicta.
This is Merps. It's only been a week since the last Lightforge, obviously, but it's felt like a long time. A lot of stuff has happened. Most notably, I have been keeping up with everyone who's been participating. All right, not everyone. Sorry, bad word choice. But with a lot of the streamers participating in the gold rush. So it's been fun for me watching from the sidelines and totally not stressing out about it. Have you been keeping up with it at all?
No, I have no idea what's going on. I've been busy with a bunch of other crap. What's going on? Who's in the lead right now? This is Sunday at 6 o'clock New York time.
Right. So this is Sunday at this is Sunday.
What are they at? What's the score they're at?
I think someone got over 4,000 for a moment, but as of right now, I'm looking at the standings, which they are not second by second updates. But as of right now, the number one player is at 3,700 gold. So I predicted, my prediction was that the number one, the person who would win it in about 6 days.
Mm-hmm.
And it started at, what was it, Wednesday? So it would be like Tuesday-ish, Wednesday-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're on track, right? And this is something which you can kind of estimate when someone's going to win because it's a huge amount of runs,
yep.
Right? So if you just average it out, I'm like, all right, someone's going to average an insane amount, but at the same time, yeah. So
Collins is at 4,000 right now, apparently.
Collins is at 4,000.
I know. When I was watching it, everyone was at 1,000s. He was at 2,000s, but I guess other people caught up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
So
we'll see later when who gets the top prizes for this. If you don't know, this is the Twitch challenge that Frodan put together, and it is very arena heavy because arena is the best way to earn gold after you complete your quests. And you need to get 5,000 gold, and whoever starts there gets a prize. I think it's like a total prize pool of what, like 25k or 15k or something.
The total prize pool is 25k. First place gets 15. So good chunk of change.
Yeah. But for those of us not insanely playing all day and night to meet this challenge, we still have news for you guys in the arena. Besides the dual, we'll get to dual class after this, right? The meat of it, because indeed, dual classes has launched, and we are in the dual class arena, and we'll tell you a bit about our observations. But before that, even, or rather, it happened one day after dual classes started, which was kind of weird. But Giggling Inventor got nerfed. On the last Lightforge, we said they're going to announce the nerfs on Monday, so we couldn't cover it last week. So we're covering it like 6 days late to the news. The huge news, 3 nerfs happened to the game. One is in Wild, so it doesn't affect Arena, but the other 2 were Giggling Inventor and Mana Worm. Giggling Inventor up 2 mana, which, by the way, our tier list still rates as better than an average card. Like, it's still somewhat pickable in the 3rd bucket. That's how insane Giggling Inventor was. And on top of that, well, okay, it's rated like that overall. You probably wouldn't actually pick it in the 3rd bucket anymore unless you're a Rogue or Warlock. Because you need the health. In any case, the other nerf is Mana Worm, which went from 1 mana to 2 mana and is now basically unplayable.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how a lot of people were complaining about Mana Worm, and not saying that it was ruining the game, but it was problematic for constructed purposes, right? It was one of those things where you look at it and you're like, this is probably limiting some design choice, and it's just one of those cards that no one will be like super angry about, but it has been identified by many constructed players as a problem. But the timing seems weird. It's like now is the time in which they are nerfing it. But I think a lot of people will agree. Mana Worm, it's a little bit too good, right? Like just a little bit too good as a 1-drop. And
so Mana Worm was the only 1-drop remaining that had higher tempo than your standard 1-drops. So your standard highest tempo 1-drop is something like an Argent Squire. I'm not counting Lost in the Jungle as being higher tempo than that. Yes, it is higher tempo than that, but very slightly, and same kind of design space, right? So that's your like top end for tempo in basically in neutrals. And Mana Worm was one of two class cards remaining that were one, not in Druid, because Druid gets a pass on this for whatever reason. Druids get like insane, well, they don't have 1-drops either, but they get insane 2-drops. But anyway, the two 1-drops that violated this were Mana Worm and Flame Imp. So they haven't nerfed Flame Imp yet. I feel like Flame Imp is one of those like very core to the whole point of Warlock, that you take the damage and you are able to tempo out. But you can also see Flame Imp be included in all sorts of Warlock decks for the same reason. When you have these over-tempoed 1-mana cards, and I don't mean over-tempoed in a bad way, I just mean literally like more tempo than you're normally able to get in neutral. When you have these designs in the game, you need a lot of these designs. Because if you just have one, then whichever class has that one is going to have like this advantage that makes it really weird for other classes to deal with. Because if every other class like goes like, let's say 3 tempo on 1 and 4 tempo on 2, and that's how they work, then one class goes like 6 tempo on 1 and 4 tempo on 2. You're not going to construct your whole deck to deal with that 6 tempo. That wouldn't be worth it. That's just one class. So instead what you do is you just lose to that class whenever you face to that class. And so that's what's problematic about the game design elements to it. There's nothing inherently problematic with having like high tempoed 1-drops, just like there's nothing inherently problematic with having high tempo 2-drops. But Blizzard's gone away from that direction really hard. And since they've gone away from that direction in their like new card releases, Mana Worm, which was never problematic before, has kind of become problematic and will become even more problematic in the future, right? So that's why they're like, let's just get rid of it right now.
Yeah, I am interested. Like, I think it's interesting that they just doubled its mana cost instead of doing something like, oh, Mana Worm is now a 1/2 rather than a 1/3, because that 1 extra health means that it's so hard to kill, right? Yeah. That 1 extra health makes such a big difference. And look, I don't know constructed. Maybe it would have still been unreasonable, but I'm surprised they didn't just initially go with the, oh, let's make it a 1/2 instead of a 1/3. And I think this card is pretty reasonable, rather than just being like, no, this card is dead.
Yeah, I think they also just wanted to kill the Tempo Mage archetype, like, totally. Because it was, I don't know that it was causing any problems, but that's what this does, right? Like, imagine you're a new player, right? Because you're talking about a basic card here with Mana Worm. You're not talking about some fancy schmancy expansion legendary. This is like super basic here. You think Mage, Mana Worm's part of the set. So before, you have some Mana Mage, you have some Mana Worms, you have some Sorcerer's Apprentice, you have a bunch of high tempo card, and you're like, alright, I'm building a Tempo Mage. It's like a thing. Now it's no longer a thing, right? Now Sorcerer's Apprentice is not for tempo, it's for combo. Now Mana Worm is not for tempo, it's for combo. And they really just killed off an archetype that was not very problematic, but maybe it helps them design stuff in the future. Like, we don't know. We don't know what's happening in the next expansion. We don't know what's happening in the next rotation.
Right.
But it's deeper into the design than just killing Mana Worm. This is a basic card. It's changing the entire identity of how Blizzard wants you to think about the class, even as a new player.
Yeah, and you see that specifically with, and I know we don't want to talk about this too much, but the Aviana nerf, right?
Yeah,
that's definitely limiting design, right? So if you guys don't know, Aviana, which is a 9-mana 5/5 that says your minions cost 1, legendary for druids. Now it costs 10, and what Blizzard wanted to do was say you can't do the Aviana and Kun the Forgotten King combo. Yeah. So you play Aviana and you play Kun to refresh all of your mana crystals, and suddenly you have 10 mana and all of your minions only cost 1 mana, and shenanigans ensue, right? So this is something which it's problematic now, and if you look at it, it's super problematic no matter what happens, right? So they were like, no, we can't just give druids this combo and limit our ability to print any druid or neutral kind of big bomb, right? Big bomb minions. So yeah, maybe they have some cool stuff ahead for mages, and this is what Mana Worm died for. Sorry, Mana Worm.
It's like, because you think about Jaina, right? The mage, it's the class that you start the tutorial with. It's the class that everyone's supposed to be the most familiar with, right? Like, Blizzard made sure of that. and now you're taking away the whole archetype. Like, what does that say about how Blizzard feels about aggro?
Yeah. They've definitely done a complete 180, and they've like kept on going down this path, right? It's like they've kind of tasted how it is to nerf aggro, and they're like, we need more.
They're like, we don't want this game to be the hunter meta. We never want that to be the case. So now hunters are going to be control. Everything's going to be control. Milling and like, I don't know, like going to the end of your deck whenever, like every like third game or something, that's fine. That's what we're into. Anyway, that's all constructed stuff. But it's just interesting the direction Blizzard is going, right? Because if Blizzard's going in this direction, it's going to affect Arena too. Because the card pool is going to reflect that, right? Like, we're not going to get another over-tempoed 1-drop without tempo setbacks, right? Like, you're going to look at Emerald Hive Queen as your, like, additional tempo 1-drops. And same with 2-drops. We haven't gotten a high-tempo 2-drop in, like... And by high tempo, I mean anything better than, like, a Raptor or a Croc, tempo-wise. We haven't gotten one of those in neutral in, I don't know how long.
Yeah, and any over-tempoed 1-drop has a huge setback, right? Such a big setback that you like can't play it. What was it? Emerald Hive Queen, right? That's a terrible 1-drop. And you have what was it?
I'm looking at this. There's nothing. Like after like Gastropod was the last one we got, and that's rotating out. After Gastropod.
And Gastropod is a board-centric, powerful early drop.
Yeah.
Like,
it's definitely not face. Right. It's board tempo.
Yeah, and for 1-drops especially not. But anyways, look, Giggling Inventor is the one that is going to impact the arena the most. And like Adwictus says...
There is none, by the way. The answer is there is none. We have not gotten a more tempo-heavy 2-drop than Raptor or Croc since Angora.
Wow. Interesting.
Or 1-drop in neutral.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure in classes, Druid is the only one that got anything.
Right. They like to do stuff like Plated Beetle now, right?
Yeah.
Where it is exactly what you should get, but then they'll give you another benefit.
Right.
Or
like Arcanologist, right?
Arcanologist,
where it's like
right.
a Croc, but you get a card advantage too, which is kind of insane. But it's still not tempo.
Gnome Feratu. You get to...
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that kind of seems to be where they're going. Anyways, a little bit of an insight on how Blizzard is thinking about it. And the stupid reign of Giggling Inventor should be over now.
All right. Let's talk about that. Because we were talking about Mana Worm, which I think some people may care about, but less people, and Giggling Inventor, which affects every aspect of the meta right now. So Giggling Inventor has moved from 5 mana to 7 mana. It moved by more than 1 mana, probably because of Constructed, because you have evens and odds decks. So they didn't want it to like sneak into even decks and then be problematic again and then have to nerf it again. So they just like killed it for Constructed, right? Put it into 7 mana. But for Arena, the card was so basic and so good that it's still going to be there. And if people stop picking it, if it gets lowered a bucket or two, like it's still going to be a very good card in the Arena. Like no longer premium, but the amount of stopping power it has and the amount of space that Giggling Inventor gives you, it's still pretty insane. And I think that kind of speaks to just how ridiculous the card was before the nerf, right? When 5 mana, you can play it, and it's an on-curve card on top of that. Now at 7 mana, it's definitely not an on-curve card. You're just using it as like a utility card, and it still has so much value.
Yeah, right now it is just a... Right. So here's typically what you look at when you evaluate a card in the arena, right? Typically cards in which they do multiple things or provide a lot of stuff, you pay for... it's not like in the real world, if you buy in bulk, it's cheaper. Like with Hearthstone, a lot of times, if you buy in bulk and this card does like 2 to 3 things or just does a lot of little things all like bunched together, you need to pay a little bit extra for that because that is typically pretty good. And Giggling Inventor went like the other way, right? A lot of these really good cards, they do like quite a couple of things, but they Blizzard doesn't make you pay extra, and in fact, you get even like a slight discount on it, or you just pay exactly the same, which is what was happening with Giggling Inventor. And now you're finally paying that little bit of tax that you should, because that's just how things are supposed to work in Hearthstone.
Yep. So yeah, I think that's just something if you didn't know now. I mean, it's a pretty large change in the arena, but now
have you been seeing Giggling? I haven't seen it, although it's dual class, so you know it's a little bit different. But I just do not see it anymore.
Yeah,
and it's such a.
I mean, it makes sense, right? They just nerfed a card to hell. It was a card seen everywhere in Constructed. Now it's not anymore. No one's gonna pick the card. And like in reality, they shouldn't pick the card unless they're Rogue or Warlock hero powers. And even in that case, they only should pick the card like less than half the time, probably. So it's a pretty safe bet that people just aren't picking the card. Once the dual class craziness like kind of subsides, actually even in the dual class arena, I think it's probably worth it to pick Giggling still sometimes if people just aren't doing it. It's like you guys know the power that like let's say Void Lord, right, has in Warlock. Well, Giggling has half of that amount of power, you know, when you scale it to 7 mana, but you can get it in other classes as well, and Void Lord's an auto pick almost. So yeah, just give it a shot, right? Like if you get like a control deck, or if you get someplace that you're like, oh, I need some more taunts, especially if you have Rogue or Warlock hero power, and then Giggling pops up, don't just dismiss it right off the bat. Really think about it, because we don't think this is a card that's like completely unpickable even in its current bucket. It's definitely
120 is decent for a third bucket.
Yeah, I mean it's less than 120 for all the classes besides Rogue and Warlock, but for Rogue it's 133. It's like fine for the third bucket, right? It's even good. For Warlock it's 137. Like these are like very high numbers, and that's because it still has the same effect that it did before, which is to stop everything, right? Like Giggling was like a 200 in Warlock before.
Yep. All right. So look, I think people are swinging really hard the other way. They see that's nerf, they're just not picking it. And you know, because a 2-mana nerf on a 5-mana card is huge.
Yep.
But it just speaks to the power level of Giggling before, right?
Yeah,
so
like if you made an OP card that should have been 3 mana higher, and then you move it up 2 mana, it's still like a great card. Here, I think they actually moved Giggling Inventor to the exact right position. Like plus 2 mana makes it like totally unproblematic, very normal of a card. So you know, good job, Blizzard. It also explains why Giggling Inventor did not move buckets, although the other buckets are still really random. So I don't know, but I think they probably just like moved Giggling out of the movement pile, because they knew it was going to get nerfed anyway, and so all the old data probably like they knew weren't going to be applicable. In other news, a lot of people, and I've been hearing this a lot, it's like, wait, so what about Massey Horror? How much lower did Massey Horror go?
I've heard that so much.
Oh my god,
yeah,
not a lot lower. Massey Horror, like you may remember it when it hits Giggling, but it hits Giggling very, 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 very rarely, even when Giggling was everywhere. Why? Because people still only had, like, on average, like, I think still less than 1 Giggling per deck. And then you would only see it play at, like, 0.3 times. And then you have to have the Massey in your hand. And you have to not need to play it for tempo. Like, yeah, it's a great kill on a Giggling Inventor. It kills a whole 5-drop, and one of the toughest 5-drops to get rid of. But that's not where Massey's value, like, where the vast majority, where like 95, 96, 97% of Massey's value is. It had nothing to do with Giggling. And so Massey's still very valuable. It may, if you thought it was an auto pick before, which it never was an auto pick, but if you were treating it as an auto pick before, it's not an auto pick anymore, but it's still good for its bucket. Like, it's still one of the better cards, especially in neutrals, in the third bucket.
Yeah, I think a lot of people tend to and this is what we've seen throughout the years, right, of doing the tier list. People tend to either significantly overstate or understate the effect of one card on another specific card, right? And in terms of that, it's like, yes, it's a small part of what made Massey good was the fact that Giggling Inventor, one of the best cards in the game, and an auto pick was very prevalent, right? But if you remember all the times you killed all these totems plus this a Stone Skin Basilisk with the Massey Horror, you killed the Sardite Chain Gang along with a couple of other small minions, right? It's still going to get supreme amount of value because the meta is still very token heavy, right? You still have a lot of weird drops that help you spread out, like MTC and also Grim Necromancer, right? Just to name a couple. So you're still going to
Menace.
Yeah, replicating Menace. You're still going to get an insane amount of value whenever you pick the Massey Horror.
Yep. All right. That's our nerf talk. Let's move on to dual class arenas and the meat of this. What's going on in dual class arenas right now? I played in the very first day, and it was a pretty aggressive leaning meta back then.
You faced aggro.
Huh?
So you faced aggro?
I faced a lot of aggro.
Oh, okay.
Has things shifted significantly? Because that was also before the Giggling Inventor nerf happened, and it was still very aggro. But Giggling works for aggro and for control, kind of, because you can block stuff with Giggling and keep attacking face, right? So what has happened since then?
Right, and I can begin talking a little bit, right, about my experiences, and because I've watched so many streams, so I'll work, and I've been watching Hafu, Educated Collins, Shady Bunny, Tex, and like Dreads, and plus all of the people who are sort of like pretty high on the standings as well, just to check out what they've been doing, right? And from my experience, so my first stream, like my very first dual class arena run was after these people had already played like 50 runs. It was on Friday night, right? But my first run was Druid Hunter. You know me, have to pick the Hunter hero power, have to go aggro, and comfortably went 12. It was very effective going aggro. And I will say, so first of all, aggro works. Let's get that out of the way, because as I have gone from stream to stream as well, and I've talked with people, one of the prevailing themes seems to be aggro does not work, which just goes back to the thing that I've said many times. It's like aggro is hard, right? It's hard and you have to fully commit yourself to it, but don't just take it from me. One of the people that is extremely high on the leaderboard right now, and I'm going to butcher this name. It's Ryu Zakix, but he was in the early lead, and he's still up there in terms of the standings. I watched one of his VODs, and in the beginning, he prioritized aggro, and in particular, picking the Hunter hero power, and worked really well. I think he made extremely good decisions in the game about taking risks, right? Going face. And more importantly, if you're doing something like Gold Rush, if you know how to play aggro effectively, you go through your run almost twice as fast as someone who's picking something like Priest Warlock, right? They're going to grind out games and they're going to win, but it's going to take them a little while longer. So in my experience, it works. And also watching one of the top performers in the Gold Rush right now, aggro is definitely something that can work if you know how to play aggro. So I would say for this event, even though there are new players, it's not the best time to learn aggro, because you have to not only do you have to know the game well, you have to know how to play around kind of both classes very well, right? So it's a different kind of risk assessment. And it's not a good time to build up that risk assessment skill, but it's a great time to use that skill if you already have it.
Yeah. All right. So what if? Is the conclusion that aggro works well, or that aggro doesn't? Because you started off saying most people say aggro doesn't work, but
no, and I'm saying they were completely wrong.
Okay. Okay.
Remember how I followed up, and I'm like, because you have to play it well. A lot of people basically are saying no, aggro doesn't work, and then you dig into it a little bit, and I'm just like, no, you're not committing to it, right? So these are a lot of people I've talked to within the streams for a chat. So when I say a lot of people, I'm not saying these streamers, right? It's just people in the chat that I've been interacting with. And they're just like, yeah, you have to play control. This is such a grindy event. And it's because you have to play control. I'm like, you don't have to play control here. Just look at like just look at that guy, right? And he has been playing aggro a ton.
Okay.
So that's number one.
And
I want to get that out.
Okay, but taking the event aside, because most people, who are listening are not playing in the event. Even without the time difference between aggro and control, like just speaking purely of win rates, at least from my experience in there, aggro seems to be doing it just fine. I've seen more 1-drops and more 2-drops than I normally see compared to before dual class strategies. And I'm reporting less on what works and doesn't work and more like what the meta is. The meta's pretty aggressive compared to pre-dual class Arena. I think it's definitely like a little more aggressive than before dual class Arena happened. From anecdotal evidence from people, it seems like dual classes has a approximately 20% increase in class cards rather than last year when it was like doubled or tripled or whatever. So dual class Arena is not very crazy right now. It's actually pretty stable. There are the same amount of ridiculous number of legendaries that we've seen since Boomsday was launched. So you're going to see a lot of that, and the swings are, especially because it's dual classes, everything's a little more swingy and more combo-y. The swings are significantly larger than your normal Arena, but it's not like as big of a clown fiesta as last year's by a pretty wide margin.
Oh, definitely. Plus, last year we had priests with all of those ridiculously OP priest cards, right? It's like if you thought Warpath was bad, last year we had Potion of Madness along with all of its other shenanigans, as well as like Dragonfire Potion. And then, you still had all of this craziness, but you had the powerful cards with the old offering rates. And you really got an insane event, which some people liked, understandably. But I would say the second part, or like if we want to continue on the dual class strategies, is if you are not going aggro, the other side works as well. Heavy control, right? And this is, so if you remember last week, one of my advice was pick Warrior first, right? Pick Warrior first just because they have a lot of good cards, and then you can get a better hero power. That was always one of their weaknesses. So I've seen a lot of combinations that work really well, like Warrior Warlock. Number one, that's sort of the control dual class that I think of, and I think a lot of people think of, just because you have all of the Warrior control cards, you have the AoE, and you have all of the AoE and control cards from Warlock as well. Plus, both of them have really good offering rates for the buckets. I've also seen stuff like... So,
by the way, Warrior right now, win percentage-wise, is 4% higher than the next highest win rate, which is Priest, and Druid pretty much tied for second. That's a huge difference. Like, if you want to win right now, you should start off with Warrior. And that's what we told you last week, because it's the class with the strongest offering bonus right now, and it has a lot of strong cards. And its weakest part was the hero power, which you're getting rid of. So if you're looking for like simple, straight advice, pick Warrior. You're not going to go wrong with there. And if you're also looking for simple, strict advice on what not to pick, don't pick Mage. The win percent is very low because mages have that offering penalty to it, and mages have one of the best hero powers in the game. So, like, you just... I know a lot of people look at things and they're like, oh, this combo, oh, that combo. And I keep getting messages about that and, like, tweets and whatever, like, especially before dual class happened, like, asking what my opinion is on this combo or that combo or what's going to dominate dual arena. You know what combo's dominating dual arena? Nothing. As predicted. You know what is dominating dual arena? Taking the best cards at the highest buckets and combining it with the best hero power. Pretty good. You know what's losing in the dual arena? Taking a class that was really reliant on its hero power and then mixing it with other classes. Like, if you're like Mage Warrior, like, that's terrible, right? Like, why would you do that? It's the fundamentals. Like, even in dual classes, like, what's powering people through dual classes are the fundamentals. Because a hero power and how good or bad it is makes such a big difference. Such a big difference at how good and how many wins that you pick up. And Hearthstone does not have balanced hero powers for the arena. Never has. So when you mix that with the like micro adjust and the bucketing and all that stuff, you have a very easily exploitable system and a pretty easily predictable system when they do something like dual classes to mix it up and figure out what which class to pick. Right? The first class is warrior. Why? Because it has the worst hero power. The second class is priest. Why? Because it has the second worst hero power. The third class is druid. They don't really have the worst hero power, but like people really suck with the druid hero power. I don't know. I don't think people like know how to like use it. And these are stats from like above average players, not like necessarily infinite players. But shaman is number 4. Again, you know, like you're basically going down the reverse order of like crappy hero powers when you're looking at the best classes to pick for the first class.
Pretty much. So yeah, I was gonna say I have also seen really good success picking like priest as the first class, right? Mostly because number one, priest has good cards, and also priest always is a class that is like very hit or miss, right? Very awkward. You don't have a lot of stuff that helps you edge out that like 1 to 2 damage that you sometimes need. So there's a lot of like overkill or just like get rolled over as priest. So you temper that aspect of the priest class with a class that has a little bit more consistency, right? More consistency, more options, and suddenly you have a very well-rounded class with a lot of heavy hitters. One of the classes I've gotten beat by is quite a few times, I think, is like priest druid. They just have like so much response, so much like options as well, and then I just get grinded down by something like that. So within this class, look, you have good aggro options, but you better go all the way with the aggro. You have good control, but at the same time, if you go control, you don't go for like some sort of like mid-range control. It's like, yeah, I think I can outvalue. It's like, no, you're not beating the warrior warlocks with like your like somewhat control class. So kind of the prevailing theme for this event is you better know the mission and goal of your deck. Draft your deck, know what you want out of it, identify your win condition, because if you don't have that, the warrior warlock will definitely beat you if you're like, yeah, I think I can beat him in control. It's like, no. If that wasn't your goal, you're not beating that warrior warlock in control. And you're like, well, I can go kind of aggressive. That druid hunter is going to smash your face in by turn 5. So that's kind of the big picture of this event. It's like whatever sort of polarized deck that existed before the event are super polarized now, because those people recognize exactly how much synergy they can extract from dual classes. So whatever you do, make sure that you have a game plan and you're sort of pushing, you're enacting your game plan on your opponent and you're not just reacting to what they just do, right? Because if you don't have a game plan, you are losing to all of these super synergistic decks that utilize kind of all of these, it's not like flashy combos, but utilize the strengths from both classes.
Yep. I think that's a good summary of what's going on right now in dual classes and how to succeed in it, right? Do polarizing things. Don't play mid-range. It's going to work not too well, especially when you get to the higher wins. And the decks just get better and more synergistic. Like, if you're running a mid-range deck, you better have a lot of combos. You better basically be running a combo deck. All right. You have anything else to say on this, Merps, or should we move on?
No, that's basically it. And this is one of those events that I know a lot of people have fun with. And I've also read, some people are just like, I'm getting frustrated by this. It's like, I just don't get it. I used to be X average win player, and now it's like X -3. Look, sometimes RNG will just hit you as well. I'm not going to try to diagnose exactly what's wrong with your runs right now because I don't see it. But at the end of the day, don't put too much stock in this, right? It could just be RNG. It could just be you're not really getting this event. But if you're pretty good otherwise and you don't get this event, that's fine, right? Look your wounds, take some time off, come back to it. Whatever it is, just don't take this too seriously. So yeah, that's essentially it. Because I see a lot of people are getting frustrated, and maybe it's the idea. It's like, oh, a lot of new players are here, so I should be really good. I should be much better than I used to be, and it's like, doesn't always happen.
It's a more swingy meta, and you have to make the adjustment, and not everyone makes the adjustment. Like plenty of very good arena players, in the past week of the event have not made a very good adjustment. It happens, right? And it's a new meta. It also doesn't help that you can only do so much mental preparation for this before it, because they don't tell you what the offering bonuses are. They don't tell you how they're bucketing, like how the bucket offering rates get when you mix classes. So you can only like half prepare for this, unlike actually telling you what all the rules of the game are, which it's Arena. Blizzard's not 100% on board and has never been 100% on board this whole like telling us what the rules of Arena stuff is going to be deal. Anyway, that's it for dual class arenas from us. Remember, this event only lasts for 2 weeks, so in a week and a half it's going to be over. So if you are very frustrated by this, you just don't even want to play anymore, come back in a week and a half. It's not ruining too much of your potential Hearthstone Arena experience.
Yeah, go enjoy the nice fall weather. Okay, so that's it for that.
Yeah.
What's next for us?
Let's go to a question from the GOAT. Do we have a question from the GOAT?
Cool. Yeah, question from the GOAT this week. Once again, it's just a little bit about dual class arenas, and what's kind of the coolest combo that you've seen, or what's been your favorite moment so far from week 1 of the dual class arenas?
The coolest moment? Oh God. This is so long ago. I mean, just the various different ways that I get absolutely wrecked. Absolutely destroyed.
Well, okay, so I would say, I have personally seen, and I played on stream, and I actually played 2 runs off stream as well. But yeah, I've seen stuff, cool stuff done with Twig of the World Tree, right? Wow. Like Twig of the World Tree plus like Rogue Hero Power. That's always a fun time. But I think my best moment wasn't like exactly my moment. I was watching Shady's stream. Right? I was watching.
So it was just Shady's moment.
It was a cool moment for me as well because I got to see it. In person, right? No, it was just because he was super tired, and he was like thinking of just like shutting it down for the day. But he got a wave of viewers because he was on like the front page. So he decided to keep on playing. And then he just like kind of picked up energy, and you see him like getting more excited. And then he got the dream where he was Druid Warlock, and then he had the what was it? No, Warlock Druid, right? Because he had the ultimate infestation. And then he Chittering Tunneler into Bloodbloom. So next turn, he Bloodbloom UI'd his opponent and then just won the game from there. So it was just really cool. It was one of those combos that I think we've like pulled off once before, and I don't know how, but I think it was like before they did the bucket, so anything could happen. But no, it was just really cool to see. And it was one of those things where you just kind of throw your hands up if you're on the other side. You're like, okay, like there was nothing I could have done, right? Nothing beats like Bloodbloom UI on turn 3 or turn 4. But it's just one of those things that remind you like why people like this event, right? Why it is super cool, and unfortunately for some people, extremely unfair, like ridiculously unfair. But it was cool to see.
Yeah, I don't have a moment like that where I watched another Arena player get an exciting moment, but no, I had there was one deck that I played where I think 3 of the, I think it only ended up going like 6 wins or something, but it had 3 games that were determined by like milled in the end, where if I didn't win this turn I would lose, and I had already like been milled for like 2 turns and taking fatigue damage. And that just shows it goes to the other side, right? Like you're one side or you're the other side. It was a very slow deck, and so when you're in dual class arena and you're a very slow deck and you plot it out well, you're going to get to fatigue a lot. It's not fun, but it is something that doesn't happen a lot in normal Arena, so it's kind of interesting the first few times it happens. And keep that in mind too. So once you start looking, like, you really have to, if you're playing control in this meta, you really have to think about like fatigue damage, and you really have to think about the number of cards remaining in your deck and your opponent's deck. There's a large number of times where, starting with my opponent or me,
stop. Okay. I gave you enough time, and I thought you were gonna turn. So, what? Your most exciting moment is fatigue?
Yeah. What? So fatigue can be exciting. Fatigue can be very exciting. You don't get fatigued a lot normally, all right? It's like a new experience. And, like, you know, it's like you take 1 damage, you take 2 damage, you take... One of my opponents died entirely to fatigue damage. I barely touched them. I just, like, made sure I didn't die, and then they, like, ran out of cards and fatigued. That was fun. You don't get to do that unless you're playing Constructed. And to have, like, decks that do that. Don't look like that. That's not... I stand by fatigue being potentially a interesting thing that happened, right?
Okay, alright. Good for you.
We just have different definitions of interesting.
Alright, well...
Like, people may be expecting huge combos or weird stuff. I'm just like, look, I had a large deck, my opponent had a large deck, starting 6 turns before fatigue, I planned out my shit better than my opponents did, and so I won. And I won a lot of, like, most of my games that go into fatigue, like, the vast majority of them, I win. Like, because I planned it out for, like, 10 turns beforehand. And that's interesting to me, because I rarely have to plan this stuff out. Even when Banshee was, like, actually in the arena, I don't know what happened to Banshee. Something happened to its offering rate. Probably a bug, but Banshee is no longer offered in the arena. But back when it was offered in the arena, I still didn't fatigue anywhere near as much as I fatigued in dual class arenas playing control decks.
Alright, that's great.
Okay, card good bad. This week's card good bad is a throwback, and it is Squashling at 96. So this is one of the more controversial cards. Yeah, oh, it's a great fatigue card. It's a very controversial card on our tier list, and just in people in general, because a lot of people think it's, like, not that great of a card, and then some people think it's, like, one of the best cards in Priest. Definitely one of the best cards for its bucket. You want to start with some experiences you have with Squashling, or why it's below 100? Like, we literally think it's a below average card, not just below average for your deck, but, like, if it was just a random card that you're getting from a card, you don't even want it to be a Squashling.
You know what? This card is a card in which I was like 100% in agreement with that rating maybe a month or two ago, and now I'm, like, kind of open to reevaluating it. You know, I think I would pick it a little bit higher, because I've seen how it screwed me over, right? In terms of, sometimes you just need that heal, and the fact that, you know, you get these bodies with the heal, you can direct where the heal is going, right? Sometimes you need to, like, heal in specific ways, heal a little bit of your face, heal some on your minions. And then just put stuff out onto the board and force them to have that small AoE, right? It's been really annoying when opponents have played it against me, and I think this is a card that I know Educated Collins really championed for, right? Like, you play together.
He loves that card.
He loves the card, and look, Collins, he sure knows how to play control. He is a very control-oriented player, and I think he's shown that a card like this definitely has a role in a playstyle that is very, very successful. So, yeah, I've definitely turned my opinions around on this card, just because I have begun noticing how many times it's either screwed me over and I've actually lost because of it, which isn't that common, or it's just, like, set me back more than I feel comfortable with, right? It's like some cards set you back, and even though I ultimately win, I'm just like, that had a pretty good effect for my opponent, right? Like, if he had just a couple more things on top of that, which I'm forcing him to do, then the result might be a little bit different. And the overall net effect of the Squashling, I'm fairly impressed by.
My opinion on Squashling hasn't changed in the last And, in anything. It's been there. It kind of moved around a little. We were trying to figure out how Echo works exactly. And it's kind of landed there. It's going to be better in a control deck than an aggro deck, obviously, very obviously. So if you are drafting a control deck, this will probably go up to like a 120 or something, which makes it a near auto pick in its bucket, right? It's only in the 5th bucket. It's only in the 5th bucket because its win rates and its pick rates are just not that high for it to be over a 5th bucket. It is a little bit of a tricky card to use, but it's also a card that's generally better when you're behind, and you can achieve that most of the time by being like less successful on the board. So even with that kind of bonus to average players versus better players, it's still not working that high. I feel like the 5th bucket probably would average around like a 110 or something, and this is like a 96, so maybe other players get a little bit more out of it. But the problem with Squashling is stats. It's always very crap in stats. The only time that it stops being crap in stats is if you have a board and it is very injured. That is insanely hard to get to. And you have to have that board on an even mana turn on top of that, or else you're still behind in tempo. So it's just bad in terms of tempo. What it's much better for is to heal your face for 10, which you don't really get a lot, right? Like, there's not a lot of cards that allow you to heal for that much. Some of the times, not too often, but some of the times, that in itself, rather than just your healing your face with the pre-zero power, will just put you out of range for what the opponent has planned and just win you the game for good. Other times, if you're being aggressive, just like anything that puts 5 bodies on the board is good. So it's got a bunch of flexibility in those weird ways, but in the end, the stats are just like so bad on this card, and it is so vulnerable to any kind of clear whatsoever. Now, is it terrible if it gets cleared? No, but it means you can't play it if you have any semblance of a board that's not just one large minion, because then you're even more vulnerable, or you may not even have space to play it, right? Like, these aren't Mastiffs, right? You can't kill them off. Like, they actually take a spot on your board. So when people have success with this deck, it's always in the context of a combo with Auchenai, which is fine, that's really good. But the combo with Auchenai is only good if the Auchenai stays on the board for a turn, too. Like, there's just so many, like, ifs and, like, very situational things. So the times in which this card wins you the game is of a significantly higher percentage than most other cards. Like, by a significant percentage. And so people they feel that it is significantly better. But I think at the end of the day, the amount of times this card is stuck in my hand is so high. And the amount of times this card actually, like, does a mediocre job is way too low. That the amount of times that this card is game winning is just not covering for that. Like, I do agree, the card is game winning much more than, like, I don't know, 85-90% of the cards, and it's in the 5th bucket, which makes it, like, insanely good in that regard. But you shouldn't need a swing to win the game, right? If you're a good player, and that's what's cutting against it a lot. And all of its flexibility is out of your control. Its flexibility is in your opponent's control, because your opponent has to put you into these weird situations in which Squashling then becomes good. So it's all like you're very, very, very reactive, and like, for a reactive card, its focus is on flexibility rather than power. And I don't know, it just
it's very descriptive. Fantastic.
It's badness. It's badness. It's overall badness in 75% of use cases is not compensated for by its extreme goodness in the 5 to 10% of cases. And then around like 10 to 15% of cases, it actually gets its normal value as a whatever echo cards you're playing.
Fantastic. All right. Yeah, I think we're like mostly in agreement here, and it's just like we feel a little bit different, right? I do agree it does get stuck in your hand quite a lot. It's just I think it is a sort of like a little bit disproportionately game influencing / game winning for that score. But even if there needs to be a change, it shouldn't be that much. Okay, that's Flashwing.
All right. So next week, our Card Good Bad, because we're trying to announce Card Good Bads a week before now. Next week's our Card Good Bad is going to be Holy Water. I've probably used Holy Water more in the past couple weeks than I have in my entire time with this card before that. So,
and if you guys haven't read the card description for Holy Water, definitely read it.
Definitely read the card description. I had no idea until you pointed this out to me last week. Zero idea.
Yeah,
anyway.
Zero idea. Great.
That's it from us. Until next week, enjoy the dual class arenas. This is Adwicta.
This is Merp. See you guys.